The roar of the motorcycle died under a harsh midday sun as the rider cut the engine and stared at the faded sign of the town he once swore he would never return to, and in that blinding daylight, with dust floating like memories he tried to outrun, he felt something crack inside his chest because coming home was never supposed to hurt this much. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment right now and like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Only kindness if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, because stories like this live only as long as hearts are willing to listen. Ronan Vale had left this place 5 years ago with nothing but anger burning hotter than his engine and a promise to himself that he would never look back, and now here he was, standing still in the middle of the day as if time itself had decided to hold him in place. The town looked smaller than he remembered, almost fragile under the clear blue sky, with its cracked sidewalks, sun-bleached shop signs, and the same bakery on the corner that once filled the street with warm smells every morning. He had grown taller, broader, harder, his skin marked by sun and road, his eyes dulled by too many nights spent chasing miles instead of meaning. 5 years on the road had given him scars and stories, but it had also hollowed something out of him, leaving a quiet ache that no speed could outrun. He told himself he was only passing through, that he would refuel and disappear again before anyone recognized him, but something pulled him forward, past the gas station and down the familiar street where his childhood footsteps once echoed. Every step felt heavier than the last as memories rose uninvited, memories of laughter that used to fill the small house at the end of the road, memories of a woman whose hands were always rough from work yet gentle in every touch. He had not called her when he left, had not written, had convinced himself that silence was easier than facing the disappointment he believed he had become. In his mind, his mother, Alara Vale, was frozen in time as she was the day he left, standing in the doorway with worry in her eyes and hope she tried to hide. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly as Ronan stepped inside, the sound slicing through his thoughts, and the midday crowd barely noticed him at first. Sunlight poured through wide windows, lighting up worn wooden tables and casting long shadows across the tiled floor. The air smelled of detergent and cheap coffee, not the warmth he remembered, and as his eyes adjusted, his gaze drifted toward the back of the room where a lone figure moved slowly between tables. His breath caught hard in his throat because the woman wiping crumbs from the surface with tired hands was not a stranger, and it was not the image he had carried with him through 5 years of distance. Alara Vale stood bent slightly forward, her hair thinner and streaked with gray, her back curved under the weight of work that never seemed to end, and she wore a faded uniform that did not belong to the life she once lived. In the bright honesty of daylight, there was no hiding the truth that hit Ronan like a blow. His mother, who once hummed while cooking and laughed despite the struggle, was cleaning tables in a cafe that paid barely enough to survive. The room seemed to tilt as guilt flooded him, sharp and relentless, because every mile he had ridden away from home had brought her closer to this moment, alone and unseen. He stood frozen, watching her wipe and straighten, her movements careful and practiced, the way people move when they are used to being invisible. There was no bitterness in her face, only a quiet endurance that broke him more than anger ever could. He realized then that his leaving had not frozen time at all, it had pushed it forward without mercy, and while he chased freedom on open roads, she had stayed behind, shouldering responsibility with no one to lean on. The midday light showed every line on her face, each one a year he had been absent, and the weight of it pressed on his chest until breathing felt like work. Ronan took a seat at a table near the window, his hands trembling as he rested them on the surface she had just cleaned. He watched her from a distance, afraid that if he moved closer too soon, the fragile moment would shatter. Memories flooded him of afternoons when she waited up for him, of sacrifices he never fully understood until now, and he felt small despite his size, a child again faced with the consequences of running away. The cafe noise faded into a dull hum as his thoughts spiraled, and he wondered how many days she had come here under the same sun, wiping away other people's messes while carrying her own pain in silence. When Alara finally looked up and their eyes met, the world seemed to pause. Recognition dawned slowly on her face, disbelief giving way to something deeper, something that trembled between joy and hurt. Ronan saw her hands still, saw the cloth fall slightly as her lips parted, and in that moment, 5 years of silence collapsed into a single breath. He stood up instinctively, his chair scraping softly against the floor, and the space between them felt impossibly wide despite the few steps it took to cross it. The rest of the day unfolded like a dream under the relentless sun. They sat together after her shift ended, light streaming through the windows as if refusing to let the truth hide in shadows. Ronan listened as she spoke of rent that rose faster than wages, of nights spent worrying, of pride swallowed because survival left no room for it. She did not accuse him, did not ask why he left or why he stayed away so long, and that kindness cut deeper than any harsh word could have. He realized that her love had not faded with time, it had simply learned to live with absence. Ronan shared pieces of his own journey, not the glory but the loneliness, the nights when the road felt endless and the victories hollow. He spoke of how every sunrise looked the same when there was no one waiting for you, and how the freedom he chased often felt like another kind of cage. The daylight outside shifted slowly, marking time they could never get back, and yet, sitting there, he felt the first hint of something he had not known in years, a fragile sense of belonging. The days that followed were filled with small, deliberate choices made under clear skies. Ronan stayed. He helped where he could, fixing things around the house, walking the town with eyes that now saw what he once ignored. He noticed the way people struggled quietly, the way kindness was often a rare currency, and he felt a pull to do something more than just apologize with words. His bike, once a symbol of escape, became a tool for work as he took odd jobs, his strength finally rooted in purpose rather than motion. Alara watched him with cautious hope, not wanting to believe too quickly, but each day he showed up, each evening he returned home before sunset, that hope grew. The house felt warmer again in the light of day, filled with shared meals and unspoken understanding. Ronan learned that staying required more courage than leaving ever did, and that rebuilding trust was a slow, patient process that could not be rushed, only lived. One afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the street, Ronan stood outside the café where it all began and made a decision that would change both their lives. He sold his bike, the machine that had carried him away, and with that money and his savings, he helped his mother leave the job that bent her back in spirit. The day she walked out of the café for the last time, the light seemed brighter, the air lighter, as if the town itself approved. Life did not become easy overnight, but it became honest. Ronan found steady work, his hands finally building something instead of gripping handlebars, and Alara rediscovered pieces of herself she thought were lost to exhaustion. They laughed more, talked more, and allowed the past to settle without letting it define them. In the honesty of daytime, without the cover of darkness or distance, they faced each other and chose to move forward together. Just before the ending of this story, take a moment and write in the comments where you are watching from and what part of this journey touched you the most, because your words matter more than you know. On a quiet afternoon, as sunlight poured through the windows of their small home, Ronan realized that coming back was not about fixing everything he broke, but about standing still long enough to feel, to care, and to choose differently. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share it so more people can be reminded that it is never too late to return, to repair, and to choose kindness, because sometimes the bravest journey is the one that leads you home.